So welcome guys, welcome back to the Alphabet podcast and the first one of 2025. That's the most you're going to get out of me. You're not going to get a happy new anything because unless we're doing things differently, it will just be the same as last year. So welcome guys, and today on the podcast it gets a little bit serious. We'll be talking trauma. Now obviously along the course of the way on this journey, on this podcast, I've spoken about specific aspects of trauma. Going back, we had the attachment trauma, we had boundaries, complex grief, domestic abuse, eating disorders or disordered eating, all things that are specific aspects of trauma. But I thought it was about time we took a broader look. So I'm going to have a very interesting, very relatable, extremely brave guest that's going to come on to share her experiences of trauma with us. So I'm looking forward to that, although I will give a trigger warning from now, because the guest that I'm going to bring on is going to speak about some quite, what I would term, even for me, quite harrowing, quite upsetting things. But the aim is not to upset you or to trigger anybody. She's a very, very, very strong individual who's overcome a lot of what she's gone through. And it's to get the benefit of her experience and to hear her story. And hopefully hearing her story via some of you to tell your story, not necessarily on a podcast, but feel confident enough to go and sit down with another person and tell your story, because that's how we start to deal with trauma. We tell our story. So guys, I'll be back in a little while with my guest, and I warn you again, there will be a trigger warning, okay? There will be some discussions around death, and it can be triggering for some. So guys, East London has joined the podcast. Baby girl, introduce yourself. Tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Hi all, I am Cherelle. I specialize in serious youth violence and exploitation. I've just finished a job working in a clinical team with young people going through mental health. I've been to university, studied criminology in the criminal justice system. So I'm all about working with the young people. I believe they're our future, and I believe they're very, very misunderstood. And I feel like it's people with real lived experience has to come along and just support the young people, help them along their journeys.
And I think that's important. And I also think it's important for people with lived experience. But obviously, I'm at an advantage, Cherelle, because I've known you for the last 18 years. But it would
Yeah.
probably be interesting for the podcast if you could talk me through the things in your early years, because obviously today we're going to be talking about trauma, and you've kindly
Mhm.
come on to share your experiences. But just talk me in the podcast through the things in your early years that you think are quite significant to the person that sits in front of us today. What do we need to know?
Okay, so I was born in the 80s, 85 to be precise. Work out my age, guys. Yeah, I'm mixed race. I was born to a young white woman. She was 16 at the time. So my mum's background, her father is half German, half Norwegian, and then her mother is English. And then my father he's Ghanaian. And I believe he was 18 and a half, 19 when he had me with my mum. I lived, well, actually, when I was first born, as I said, my mum's father come from Germany, Norway. So he weren't happy about her having a baby, me, with a black man. So she lived with her parents. She uh, concealed the pregnancy. I think she was a few weeks before giving birth to me, before they actually found out. He kicked her out of the house. So my first home was living with the nuns, actually, with my
Wow.
mum. Yeah,
Nuns.
yeah. I live with nuns. Yeah, I believe it didn't last very long. My mum couldn't handle it. And my nan really had our backs. And my nan demanded that my mum went home. So she went home in the interim. So it was a few months. And then she got her first flat. And that's where I was for the next six years.
Mm.
And they were my really early years. Got some real deep memories from my early years. So my father, he used to work on the stalls in Walthamstow Market, so he'd get the stalls out early in the morning.
Proper East
Um,
London. That's what I think of when I think of.
real, yeah, real East London. So he used to work on the stalls and get the market stalls out in the morning, put them away in the evening. But I think he specialised in armed robbery at the time. So yeah, that was his day job, but his speciality was armed robbery. And he was just very confused, I think. Yeah, he smoked a lot and he used to beat my mum quite bad. And they're probably my earliest memories, to be fair. But I was a real daddy's girl. Yeah, I was a real daddy's girl. I think my first memories are of just loving my dad, just always being with my dad and just always going to my dad. Remember a few times like my dad beating up my mum. My mum would have black eyes and I'd actually like they'd both be crying, but I'd run to my dad, even though my mum's hurt and in pain. I'd run to my dad and console my dad as a very little young girl.
Very normal
Um,
for a child, by the way.
Pardon?
Very normal for a child, by the way.
Yeah, I believe one of my first memories, I was about 3.5, and I had a dummy, and my dad had been away, and we was going to meet my dad. He was coming out of prison that day. We was on the train, and my mum said to me, like, you don't want your dad to see you with your dummy. And I threw away my dummy. And that's always stuck with me
Wow.
because I remember my dummy being my comfort and always having the dummy. But as soon as my dad was mentioned, I had the ability to throw away that dummy. So as through the older years, that's really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you make of that?
yes.
What do you make of that initially? We will continue. What's the conclusion you have of that?
So for me, the reflection on it was the impact my dad had on me.
Yeah.
I guess it's every child, isn't it? Like daddy's the hero, and
That,
yeah, I guess now looking back, and I said this to my one of my younger sisters the other day. I said, I believe it had my dad not have fell off the way he'd fell off, our lives would have been very different. And I believe the impact he would have had on my life could have sent me down a complete different road to and what I've been on, what I've been through in my time, especially when it comes to men.
yeah. So
And
you
and
say
I've
you witnessed violence. You say, and you can remember being about 3.5, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my very first memories. I've got some real. My very first memories, probably yeah, 3.5. The dummy one that was about 3.5, but that's just always impacted me. That's always a memory. When I think of my dad, I always think of that memory,
Yeah.
and I just wonder, had he been around in my later years, what my patterns with men would have been like, and what impact he would have had on that because he was very impactful in my life as a young child. And that's something you can't really look at until you have a bit of an understanding, until your brain matures a bit.
Hmm.
So back when I was younger, I didn't understand how much of an impact my father had on me. But it's only in the latter years that I've realized how much. And that's very interesting to me, especially with the life I've lived, and especially when I look at the pattern of men I've gone for in my life.
So it's interesting
But
that
yeah,
you should say that because obviously I know that you're the oldest. You have two younger sisters as well, but
mm-mm.
it's interesting that you refer to the pattern of your relationships. So can you talk me through your teenage years, including your relationships, and a very
Yeah,
important thing that happened when you were around about 20?
yeah. So staying on the same track, really. So I believe I was about 5 when my first younger sister was born, my middle sister. I'm going to refer to her as T, just for the sake of the podcast. Yeah, I remember being about 5, and my mum was still in this relationship, and the relationship was very bad. I mean, at this time, I'd seen extreme levels of violence. I'd seen my father put guns to my mum's head. I'd seen my grandfather come to the house with a gun for my father. So I'd seen a lot of violence that a child shouldn't have seen. I remember my mum telling me that she was pregnant with T, and I remember the disappointment I felt actually. And I remember that clear as day today.
What's the age
Um,
difference? Six.
so I'm 5 years older than T,
Okay.
and then 6.5 years older than Bo. I'm gonna refer to my younger sister as.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I remember because I remember the disappointment, and the disappointment come from now she's gonna have to see this, and it's my responsibility to shield her from this. And then T was born, and rightly so. Yes, the violence continued. If anything, it probably got worse. And I remember I remember prior to T being born, when the fights would happen, I'd run to my bedroom and I'd cuddle my teddy bears. And then T was born, and now I've got a real life teddy bear. So I'm just cuddling my real life teddy bear, and I'm talking to my little baby. So I'm cuddling my real life teddy bear. I'm 5, 5.5. And then very soon after T was born, so between T and Bo, there's 18 months different. So it was months later, my mum's pregnant again with Bo now. And then Bo was born, and during the pregnancy with Bo, my mum was told Bo was a boy. So she had everything blue. My dad was ecstatic. He's getting his son, he's getting a boy. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, because I'm lucky I got two sisters. However,
Don't let her hear
at
you
the
say that.
time, it was unfortunate because Bo was born and Bo was actually a girl. But that made my father believe that my mum had cheated and come up with a lie. So he beat her quite bad. I believe that was at the hospital. Beat her quite bad before she come out of the hospital. So she come out of the hospital eventually, and Bo was sitting in the house, and I remember Bo was just laying in the cot forever in the Moses basket. She didn't have a name. Kept saying to my mum, "What's her name? What's her name?" Every day in school, in primary school, the teacher saying to me, "Oh, your little sister got a name yet?" No, every day, no, no, no. And then one particular day, I think it was about 3 weeks after Bo was born, I went into school and she said, "Oh, she got a name?" And I said, "Yeah, her name's Bo." And that's how my youngest sister come up with her name. So I come out of school that day, and I remember clear as day. I said, "Mum, I've named the baby. Her name's Bo." My mum was like, "Oh, okay." And then she just went with the name. So yeah, that's how my youngest sister got her name. And very shortly after middle of the night, we left. We left the house. We ran. My mum got a house shortly after that, again in Walthamstow, on an estate. And I guess that was probably when my childhood started, I want to say. So these times I'm about 6.5, coming on 7, on an estate. I don't know, council estates, people, especially them times in the 90s, people was very community orientated. My mum's best friend lived a few doors away from her. She had a child who was more my sister's age, but it was just family unit. My dad was, I'd say, gone, but he'd pop up here and there. My mum got a lot more strength. Now she's a single mum raising her 3 girls. So, yeah, that was probably the start of my childhood. Very happy memories, got a lot of happy memories there. Riding the bikes on the street. I had a traveller gypsy site down the road from where I lived. Made a couple of friends on there. I had horses growing up, so I used to go on the sites and ride the horses.
Your old horses, don't
Um,
bust me up.
yeah, yeah. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I grew up in a council estate. I grew up in a single parent household. However, my nan's family are, I wouldn't say middle class, upper class. They're quite well off. They come from Kent and Frinton on Sea, very good careers, quite a bit of money. So I also saw the other side, which not a lot of young people from council estates see. So when I would go out with my nan and her sister and that side of the family, it would always be to like the theatre, and it would be a complete different lifestyle to what I actually see. So as I was getting older, I saw another class, and I remember being quite young, going to my nan's brother's house, and it was a house, big doors and swirly stairs and a big house. And I was like, I don't come from this. So I was aware of classism very young. Same with the racism. I was aware because of the racism in my family from very young. Also on my dad's side of the family. So I spent a lot of time around my African family, and they didn't like my white side of the family. So like it was
That's
very
very common.
conflicted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mum was always called a witch by my grandmother. And then my grandfather on my mum's side, we was called black bees and black this. And so it was very conflicting growing up. However, I experienced so much stuff at a very young age that when I become a teenager, I was able to fit the puzzle together and the pieces together. So I understood racism, classism very quickly because of my own life experiences.
Yeah. Did you ever struggle? Did you ever struggle to find your own identity within that, or was you always pretty sure of who you were? And
Yeah, 100%. No, no. I would say, so for me, I would say growing up was very confusing for me. because I'm growing up in a white household. Well, my mum's white, right? That's the only parent I've got in the household. As I said, from a very young age, see, my sisters didn't really have this experience with my African side of the family because they were babies, right? But I did, so I was able to hear about Ghana, and I was educated about these things from the African culture, from my African family at a very young age, which I didn't understand at the time. But as I was growing up, I resonated with it. I understood it. But I think because, so my mum had friends, and my mum's friends were black. So I was around her friends, I was around the black culture, and my mum took on a lot, very much so, she took on the black culture.
Mum's
I,
lovely.
yeah. So like when I get in trouble, I get beats. I was always taught like I can't eat at other people's houses. Like I was brought up in a certain way which you don't usually see in the white household. I believe that's from the influence my mum had from her friends and the people she was around at the time, right? However, I think the trauma, seeing so much violence at a very young age, when I got to after the age of 10, I become very violent. And for me, any problem, I just wanted to fight. I just wanted to release my anger. So as a teenager, I was very confused. I didn't understand emotions and feelings. All of my emotions and feelings, everything I felt inside of me, this all just come out as anger. So I was constantly fighting. I was constantly getting in trouble at school. I was constantly having the police kick off my mum's door. I was around gangs. I was in a gang. Some may say I was the head of my gang. Like I was always a leader. So I never people couldn't influence me, but I influenced other people very easily.
Yeah.
So for me, I think my confusion, everything that I felt growing up and everything who I was just was all came out as anger. And it took me to some very bad places. Yeah, I think I might have gone off topic a little
No, no,
bit.
no, 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 no. Because we was talking about your teenage years. So you were saying that you was very
Yeah,
angry, and you've gone from witnessing all this violence now to actually being violent and not having the capacity to deal with your emotions in any way and just feeling all this anger, which I might add is quite normal considering what you've
uh,
experienced. But it must have been
yeah.
quite difficult for your mum to deal with and all this
See, it was
trouble from
very
your.
difficult for
Mm.
my mum to deal with. I think for so as I said, from a very young age, I stepped in as a parent for both T and Bo, right? So some might say I was parentified, but that just what it was, right? So as we all know, I grew up in the 90s, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. From 10 years old, I was getting on the bus, leaving school on my own, getting on the bus from Walthamstow to Leighton, going to my grandmother's house every weekend. Bo and T had a babysitter. I didn't have a babysitter, right? Like when I become of an age 12, 13, Bo and T didn't need a babysitter no more because I was their babysitter. So I would be taking care of them in the holidays. And I think I resented my mum quite a bit. I remember a few times like going with my mum to fight her friends or people she had fell out with. I remember like my mum being out all day and I've got all this stress on my mind as a teenager and I'm in this
All
relationship.
this normal
To be
stuff.
fair, yeah, to be fair to my mum, obviously you don't let your parents know everything that's going on in your life. However, my mum wasn't my mum, she her work ethic is massive. So she's always worked. She's always worked very hard. We've always had what, as I said, I had horses growing up. I used to talk to the people, my friends on the estate, and they'll be like, "You're rich. You're going Stansted. You've got stables. You've got horses." I weren't rich, but my mum worked very hard. However, in that, I didn't get the emotional side from my mum, and I guess that comes from her father and what trickled down to her. But I don't have memories of my mum hugging me and telling me she loves me. But then memories come from when something bad happens. That's when I'll get a hug and that's when I'll get told I love you. And that's hard to deal with as a teenager, especially when you've got so much going on, and especially when you feel like you've got to protect these
And
children
you
and
feel
you don't
resentful,
even know.
and you do feel
Yeah,
resentful. That feeling is very
you
real and
do.
very valid.
So I felt resentful to my mum because you put all this responsibility on me, and it weren't my responsibility. So I think at the time when the police are kicking off her door and stuff, I didn't really care. I didn't really care about my mom's feelings. I was just like, this is what you've given to me. This is how life is. I didn't think life was any other way. I've seen police from a child. I've seen violence from a child. Like I'm the eldest. I'm now the father. I've got to play the husband role. I'm the protector, and I'm gonna take care of everything and make sure the family's okay. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a difficult one because obviously I've got my feelings, but then my mum's got her feelings. And growing up now, I can understand how hard that was for her, having the police kick off her door all the time, or having to come and bail me out, or people coming to the door because I'm fighting and I've got all this. That must have been very, very stressful for her. So yeah, so I can understand the stress she went through. I put her through a lot of stress. I think I've apologized for it a lot of times because it's something that I'm thinking the right word now. Me being a parent is something that I would never want to go through with my
Yeah.
children.
You become more reflective, I
However,
think.
yeah, you become more reflective. However, as I said, I think missing the emotional side, this is why I hug and kiss my children and tell them I love them every day, multiple times a day.
Yes.
Having that, not having that growing up can turn you into a very hard person. And this is what I talk to with my young people quite a bit. Like, if you want to hug your mom, kiss your mom, go do it.
Yeah.
Even if she's not touchy feely, just go in the kitchen, hug her, kiss her, do a little 1-2 step with her, little dance with her, bust 1-2 joke with her,
Mm.
because that's gonna comfort your insides more. And I think for me, I was just looking for love, looking for love, looking for love. Yeah, so I think that was massive in my life. So now when my mum hugs me and kisses me now, I'm a bit like,
It's a
are
bit
you all
awkward.
right?
You
What's
feel, does
going
it feel a
on?
bit awkward?
Yeah,
Me and my mum, we
yeah,
try
what's
now, but
happened?
my mum is not that touchy-feely person. And I was that
No.
child with all the big emotions that wanted loads of hugs. And I
Mm.
think especially as a small child. But by the time I became a teenager, I knew that I wasn't going to get that. So you find yourself holding back. And I found that it's held me back in my relationship. So when you're a
Mm.
teenager now, you're angry, you're getting in trouble with the law, the police are kicking off your door. You must have started having relationships by this point.
Yeah, so my first relationship started around 14. He was like a year older than me, so not too much older than me. But he had been through his own trauma. He had seen his own stuff in his family home, and he had he had now got his own patterns and his own way of dealing with things. He was in a gang. He was quite a prolific offender. So I think us two together was just destined for trouble. But so yeah, the relationship started off okay, started off quite good. I think by the time I was 16, he started hitting me, and now I'm in a domestic violent relationship, and it got quite bad. First, it was bruises on the arms, on your legs, yeah, and then it started getting to black eyes and bust lips and everything in between. I first got pregnant, I would say I was 16 years old, 16 and a half. I lost that baby about 12 weeks pregnant. So that was my first miscarriage. Had another miscarriage at 14 weeks, and then I got to. So we was very on and off. He was going to prison quite a bit in the relationship. We were just, yeah, it was a very violent, dramatized relationship. One thing I will say, he was there for me quite a bit, and that's what kept the bond going. During this time, my mum started drinking quite a lot, becoming alcoholic. As I said, I was the other parent in the house, so I was taking care of my younger sisters. I'm a teenager. By these times, they're like 10, 11. So they're growing up now. They're seeing things, they're understanding things, and they relied on me a lot. I was their protection, and he become my protection, and I started to rely on him. He was always there when I needed him. When my mum was too drunk and stuff, he'd turn up, he'd support me, he'd help me. So I think that solidified our bond. He was the person I would talk to about everything.
Trauma
Um,
bond. Trauma bond.
yeah, it was a trauma bond. Yeah, And it just solidified us. As I said, there was a lot of violence in the relationship, and we triggered one another. I knew how to trigger him. I won't say he was a man, he was bigger than me. So he would always overpower me, but I'd give as good as I got. I would try and fight him when I could. But I'd always be the one ended up beat up and bruised and battered. And so, yeah, so I was 19, pregnant, made it quite far this time, I was a few days away from 5 months, 5 months being pregnant, got into an argument, he grabbed me up, I fell down a few stairs, I lost the baby. So that was massive for me. That was huge because by this time, this is the third baby I've lost. I'm in my second trimester with this baby, gone quite far. I ended up putting him in prison for that. I called the police. Now, up until this time, I'd never called the police, but my mum had called the police on him previously. And a few times I come home and the CID was sitting there and I told them, F off, go away. I would never press charges on him. This particular day, I called the police because I was like, I need to put the baby first. I need to protect us. And I can't do that with him out on the street. As I said, he was a prolific offender, and I believe he was wanted at the time for something else, and I knew that. So I knew if I called the police, he'll get put on remand.
Yeah.
And I did. I called the police, and I remember they put me in a safe house in Edmonton that evening where they go out and look for him. And I just couldn't feel the baby move, couldn't feel the baby move, couldn't feel the baby move. Next day, found out, yeah, I've lost the baby. So yeah, so he actually got arrested by the morning and they put him on remand. Anyway, so he was on remand for a while. As I said, he had another case as well. So he was on remand for the both. In the end, I ended up dropping the charges. So I've lost the baby now. I am doing my thing now. I live on my own. So I lived in St James Street at the bottom of Walthamstow Market, and I was very popular around my area. So I knew a lot of the man them, I knew a lot of boys, I knew a lot of girls, and a particular group of man them who lived quite close to me had really good relationship bonds with and stuff. And they started to see me with the black eyes, with the bruises. They knew who my ex partner was, so they want to get involved. And I just every time, no, leave it, leave it. I remember actually two of them when I lost the baby. The day I come out of the hospital, they was there. They was by my side, sat in the room with me, and
Need to go,
just
right?
chilled with me. Yeah. So when I did put him in prison, now I had conversations with these boys, and they said, you know what, like you serious? You're not going back? I said, I'm not going back. Like they said, all right, cool, we're gonna make sure you're all right. And they did. They was at my house every single day. As I said, he was on remand these times, but then I dropped the charges, I don't know, say 5, 6 months into the case. I didn't go to court. So they was at my house every day. He'd come out of prison now, and they were just like, he's not getting near you. Couple of times they would be at my house and he'd drive by and shout abuse and stuff. They'd see because they'd be sitting in the window. There was always at least 5 men in the house, my friends, whatever. So he stayed relatively away. However, there was this one girl that when I did put him away, this one girl that he was seeing previously, part of his crew or gang, whatever, and she was going back and forth with me, trying to make me drop charges, running her mouth and stuff like that. So a couple times we needed butt heads, but we never actually fought. But she was doing a lot. She was doing the most at the time. So anyway, as I said, I was around these boys. He didn't really, once he come out, he didn't really come around me. And then it happened to be the year of my baby's anniversary, the first year. And I was on the doorstep actually getting something off my younger sister. Bo, she had brought it to my house. She was with a couple of her friends. She was going on to her friend's house around the corner. And someone drove past, happened to be this girl, and she shouted out, Cherelle, you fat bitch, or something like that. Right? So I was like, oh, that's that girl. Like, yeah, that's that girl. Anyway, I've gone back in my house. My sister's gone with her friend. She's gone, as I said, she was going to her friend's house. So I'm now in the mirror. I've got a little rectangular mirror. I'm plucking my eyebrows in the mirror. My phone's rang, and my youngest sister, Boa, said the girl's in the chicken shop, standing by the door, can't get out of the chicken shop. That's it. I've just gone.
Yeah.
Trainers on. I've gone. Chicken shop's literally 3 minutes away from the house. It's on a high road, across the road. So I've run into the chicken shop. Straight away, on site, it's on.
Yeah.
As I said, that day, it was the baby's anniversary. Emotions are running crazy high. That's my youngest sister, the baby one as well. And I can't lie, I think I'm 20 at the time. I felt like I really had to like fight, just to show my sister like I'll never have anyone treating us like that
Treat me
as
like that.
well. Yeah, she's there. So anyway, I did. So we fought quite bad. I remember a boy getting involved, someone that we didn't know got involved, trying to stop it. Anyway, when I stopped fighting, I see blood all over me. So I'm looking like thinking it's me, the adrenaline's running. It's not me. And my hands all cut up. And then it dawned on me, I had the mirror in my hand, the little mirror that I was doing my eyebrows with. I had that in my hand. But I knew. I was, what have you done? So anyway, I go home. I remember, obviously, my younger sister, Bo, she called my mum. I remember my mum calling me. And by this time, I'd been arrested like a good 13 times. Never got a guilty in court. So I was quite bossy when it come to the police and the criminal justice system. And I thought, yeah, like, I remember my mum calling me and I'll remember these words to this day. You could go Holloway for this. What did you do? Right? And I said to her, I ain't going nowhere. My mum was saying, come to my house, come to my house. So no, I'm all right. My friend was coming over at the time. So I said, oh, she's coming to my house. I'm all right. Anyway, my friend did come to my house. She sat with me for a few hours. I lived in a shared accommodation. And the person that I had, the other person who was living there, I knew her. So she had her boyfriend at the house that day and her boyfriend's friends, couple of them, they was in the kitchen. So my bedroom was at the back of the house. And then you got her bedroom, and then you got a few stairs, and then you got the kitchen at the back. So they were all in the kitchen. When my friends left, me and my friend was in the bedroom. When my friends left, I've just locked my bedroom door and gone sleep. And I could hear that they are drinking and stuff in the kitchen, so they're quite loud anyway. Anyway, during my sleep, I could hear quite a lot of commotion, quite a lot of noise. Thinking nothing of it, I'm either dreaming or they're just having fun. Anyway, next thing, my door flies off. My ex is standing there. He's kicked open the door, and he's like picked up a baseball bat, got a shooter, and he's battered me with a baseball bat. I've managed to jump up and run. He's come chasing after me, kicked me down these stairs. I've gone down the stairs. I remember going in the back garden, running in the garden because they was trying to like stop him, get us away, kind of thing. And we hid round the back of like a stairway in the back garden. I remember one of his friends with a knife there. He's like, "Don't worry, I've got a knife shell." But what's the knife gonna do? He's got a gun.
Yeah.
Like,
You
oh,
can't bring a knife to a gunfight.
like,
You're not from the hood.
no. So, so anyway, the police were called at the time. We can hear the smashing going on. So this boy, my ex, is smashing up my room, smashing everything in it. He trashed everything. But we thought it gone, so we've gone back in the room to see what he's done. These times, I remember I had like black hair, was all banged in from the baseball bat. I had some big hematoma on my bum. I just remember the pain coming from my backside. Yeah, so then we've gone in the room. As we've gone in the room, bricks come through the window, glass has gone flying all over us. About 3 minutes later, we just seen blue, sirens, sirens, sirens. The police have come in the house. Obviously, there was a gun involved, so it's armed police. So they're screaming at us. I'm screaming. So all the rest of them, like there must have been about 5 people in the house. They're all on the floor in my bedroom because the armed police come in. They come in
Get
very
down, get
erratic.
down, get
Get
down.
down, get
Yeah,
down.
get
They're
down.
shouting. So me, I'm like the adrenaline's going crazy. So I'm screaming at them. You're letting him get away. You're letting him get away. He's going, and they're screaming at me, get down. I had the red light right here,
Mm-mm.
right on my chest. And I remember, I mean, all to this day, this person could have saved my life because I remember one of the boys pulling me down on the floor, and I dropped on the floor, and straight away they've all run over to me, cuffed me. So I'm like, what's going on? You're letting him get away. They said, are you Cherelle? Surname, yeah. We're arresting you for GBH and with intent. Huh? Look at me. So they're like the fight earlier on in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, so straight away they took me to police station on Friday night. took me to the police station,
No
sitting
court
in the
until.
police station, no court till Monday. So I'm sitting there. But all of that, as I said, I'm bossy. Because I'm thinking, I ain't going nowhere. I'm getting bail. I've always got bail. So I'm worried. I'm more worried about my injuries. Do you know what I mean? Like, they got the police doctor to come and the nurse and stuff. And, they're saying, like, go to the hospital. But I say no, because I'm thinking I'm coming home. I'm going to the hospital myself. So I don't want to go to the hospital in cuffs with them.
Yeah.
So I'm quite bossy. So sitting in the cell all weekend. And because I had all these injuries as well, they had to sit with me 24/7 and watch me, the police officers. So I've got no privacy the whole weekend. In the end, they've managed to do my statement. So when they've come back to me after the statement, they said, "Oh, you're going to court on Monday." So now the bossiness is fading a
He's
little bit.
draining.
Like, what do you mean? I like, because why am I going court? Like, why am I not getting bail? I need bail. Anyway, Monday morning comes, go to court, no bail. They reminded me, they said,
You remember what you were thinking
uh,
at that exact moment?
I can. I remember, so I had a few people in the gallery. It was at Walthamstow Magistrates Court. And as I said, I've been in this court a lot of times. But this time, what's different is I'm behind the dock, behind the glass. Every other time, I've been behind the dock, but there's no glass, right? So I remember looking up because there's no glass on the top. How do I Spider-Man and jump over there and just run out of the court? That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that was my fault. I looked up, like, can I jump over there?
How
No,
the
you
hell am I
can't.
getting out of here?
You go jail, right? I think even so, someone shouted at the TV to me when they was taking me down, and I thought, okay, so in my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to prison. I'm going Holloway. The only women's prison thing I had in my head was Bad Girls, right? You remember the TV program Bad Girls? So that was the only thing in my head. So I was thinking I'm going to go in there, people are going to try and rape me with broomsticks, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. And that was my thought process. So when someone said the TV, I was like, okay, so anyone comes near me, you just put the TV over their head. That was my thought process. So when I first went to prison, the first like 3 weeks, every time I was talking to people, I was standing in front of the TV in the cell, just in case I had to pick up the TV. And I remember when I first went in, I was looking for brooms because broomsticks was just in my head. So I was looking for brooms, thinking like, "Don't try me, like it's not happening." But I remember being on the bus, and I think on the bus, I was in so much shock. I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't even cry. These times I'm hard at the minute. I'm like just like, oh man, like what has gone on? And as I said, I'm injured as well, so I couldn't even sit on my backside. I was all sitting all funky, and and in the bus I'm thinking I'm going in there. I'm broke up, so these people are already gonna think I'm an idiot. So they're gonna all try me because I'm going there vulnerable as it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to Holloway, and I remember the first two people I see, talking to them when they book you in, and the first two women I see, I'm talking to them. One of them, I said, "Oh, how long you got?" One of them had started like 33 years. She had put a hit on her husband. I said, "Oh my God, this ain't for me." She put a hit on her husband. This woman actually was, I think she had got the highest prison sentence a woman had got in England previously, like ever before at that time. She's got a lot of years
Yeah,
for
because
a hit
Holloway
on
had
her
a lot of
husband.
had a lot of lifers back then.
Yeah, a lot of lifers at that time. So anyway, they booked me in. I remember that they asked you, are you a smoker? You're not a smoker. So if you're a smoker, you get a smoker's pack. If you weren't, and them times you could actually smoke in the prisons. So I think you get some Golden Virginia, some Rizzler, a lighter. If you don't smoke, you get the sweetie pack where you get the chocolate and all of that. So I got the smoker's pack. So and them times you could smoke in the cell and that. I remember so I'm waiting to go to the place now. So I went in there, and it's like the first bit when you go into Holloway, the overnight stay, you're there for a
Yeah.
couple of days. So I got there, but it wasn't resonating with me. The things that was being said to me, I'm in La La World, right? So when they're talking to me in this booking in, it's not registering. I'm only going to this place for a few days.
Mhm.
So when I've got there, I've gone in the cell, I've got carpet, I've got curtains, I've got kettle. I thought
You
this
can
is
rent
right.
DVDs. You could
This
rent
is
DVDs.
Holloway. I said, this is Holloway Inn. I got my first phone call. I called my mum. I said, Mum, don't worry about me. It's Holloway Inn. I'm fine. Right. So the next morning, I think you have to go for like a resettlement or something. Like it tells you about the prison. Anyway, I'm sitting there, they put a DVD on. They're showing me the real actual wing now. So now it's dawned on me, hold on, I'm not at Holloway in for the foreseeable. I'm going to the real wings. And I'm seeing these wings. I'm seeing just, I was heartbroken. And I remember coming back to the cell. All now I hadn't cried. I remember coming back to the cell, and I think I cried for about 2 hours straight in the bed. Like, what have I done? And remember, I'm on a GBH with intent charge as well. So I'm on remand. I don't know how long I've got, but before I went in the van, my solicitor said, like, don't worry, we're going to fight this. We're going to not guilty all the way because you're looking
Yeah.
minimum 5 years for what you've done.
Yeah.
So I had got a GBH with intent charged on the girl. And then the guy that actually come to stop it, I got an ABH and a GBH charge on him
Yeah.
because I'd cut his face during the
Obviously,
time.
for the podcast, the Section 18 GBH is more serious than, I think it's a Section
Yeah, 20.
20. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I was just like, I'm here. Like, anyway, then they took me to the YO wing, and I was with a lot of young people. I remember going in the cell. So by this time, I hadn't really seen a lot of people in Holloway. You go out and exercise when you're in that little bit when you first get there, but you don't really interact with the real prison and the real prisoners. You're just with these people, and from the jump, like the people that was going in when I went in were all Class A drug users. So I'm just there, stiff faced, keeping myself to myself, not talking to no one. So yeah, then they put me in the wing, and I was in a dorm, 5 people. So I went into this dorm before anyone's come back from education or work, wherever they are. So I'm the only one in there now. So I'm in the bed. I remember I got my jogging bottoms on, coat still on, puffer jacket on, laying on top of the bed, just sleeping. Because now I'm like in a depression and I'm in pain as well. Remember, I
Yeah.
haven't had gone to the hospital for my injuries. This hermatomia on my backside was getting bigger. I didn't want to see the people at the Holloway, like the nurse and doctor and that, because still at this time I'm thinking I'm getting bail next week or I'm coming home. So I was just like trying to hold it all. And then I remember the first girl walked in the cell, second girl, the third one, looked at her, she had short hair, she looked like a boy. I thought, what have you got yourself into, Cherelle? No, like I'm 20 years old. So for me, like you never I would never have on the street mixed with class A drug users or someone that's gay, lesbian. Like that just weren't the thing back then. So for me, I'm just thinking, so anyway, these girls are coming to cell and I'm talking to them. Obviously they're asking me what I'm in for, we're having conversation. They're all gay, they've all got girlfriends. So I'm just thinking, what is
I'm thinking,
going
what have I got
on here?
myself
Like,
into?
what is this? Like, and one of them said to me, "Oh, don't worry, a couple of weeks you'll have a girlfriend." I looked at her like, "Are you all right?" Like, no, 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 right? So then I remember that. So yeah, I think this was the first day I've gone onto the wing, went to exercise, and I'm just again just standing there stealth in the corner, screw face, and then some girl come over to me. And she was like, "Oh, you're right. Like, don't worry. Like, what's up? Like, whatever." Very welcoming, very comforting, talking to me. Probably the first person I actually resonated with, connected with, spoke to, started talking back to her. So I'm gonna refer to her as Lucy for the purpose of the podcast. So yeah, I'm talking back to her, talking to her. She's a really nice girl. Yeah, a bit older than me as well. So was showing me the way. She said to me, "Oh, I'm a listener. So like, what wing are you on? I'll come and check you. Like, do you need anything? Whatever, whatever." I told her the wing. And I think, yeah, in the next few days, she did come and check on me. Every time I went exercise, she'd come and find me, take me with her, introduce me to the people she knew. So she become my bona fide in there from quite early on. So I went in a month before my 21st birthday. So as the time weeks were going on now, I'd gone for bail twice and they'd said no. And now I had seen the doctors and stuff. They'd referred me to the hospital, so they was taking me out of the prison to the hospital to check like my injuries and stuff. I had to have head scans and all of this different stuff. I remember saying to my mum and all my sisters, all my friends, that I was someone that I got so many visits every week. I was in the visiting hall getting visits.
And when you're on
So
remand, you can have more visits, can't you?
yes, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2 or 4, no, 4 visits a week. Was it?
Yeah,
4
I
visits
think
a week,
yeah. When
maybe. I
you're
think
when,
something like
honestly,
that.
remanded is innocent until proven guilty, so
Yeah.
you still have a lot more rights than convicted prisoners. So you'd be able to wear your own clothes.
Yeah, so I could wear my own clothes. So I was getting parcels quite a lot. My mum had me when I was in prison. My mum really had me. Like she was sending me money. Some could say that she was working for me. Like she was literally sending me money. I asked her every minute, trainers, tracksuits. She'd just send it. Like I'd ask her for it. A couple of days later, I'd have it. I mean, I was spoiled in prison. I remember it was winter and they used to put the heating up really high and it would be too hot. I used to get my mum to call the prison and complain. So they'd turn it off,
Oh my
and I'd
gosh,
be freezing
don't
cold.
joke.
Yeah, and then I'd be freezing cold. So I'd get her to call the prison again. Like I'm too cold. Yeah, my mum done everything and anything for me when I was in prison. And something interesting, my mum was very emotional when I was in prison. So that emotional connection that me and my mum didn't have, I started to get that in prison. And when you are in prison, I don't care what anyone says, man, woman, you're vulnerable, right? You're in a world within a world. And this is something I have to explain to my young people that prison is all fun and games and that it's like I used to call it boot camp, right? Boarding school. However, you're in a world within a world, and in this prison, you can't get a toilet paper. Yeah, so the apps, you have to put an app in to get a toilet roll. You have to put an app in to get clothes. You have to put an app in to get anything you want in prison. You have to put an app in. So that makes you extremely vulnerable. Not only that, when you're in prison, so this is what I always used to try and explain to my friends and my family. Like I'm not in the real world. Like prison is a world within a world. And I think the trauma that comes from that, the things in prison is not what you would see just walking the street or at home. I've been very fortunate, always had a nice, comfy home, went into prison, got on the wings. I mean, to be fair, the young people's wing was as young people as it could be. The walls were purple,
Hmm.
not grey or white or plain. There were quite a lot of pictures around, and I would say the first part of the first part of Holloway wasn't as serious as going over to the adult wing. But my point was that you're living in the real world in a complete different world, and that was alien to me because I was someone that kind of just done my own thing. Like I done what I wanted when I wanted. My mum tried to keep me in line and in check as much as she could, but I always had my own mind. As I said, I've always been that leader. I've always had that from a very young age as well. So no one could really tell me anything. Authority wasn't my thing. So once I've got to prison and like I've got to put an app in just to have this or have some trainers or have some toilet roll or the
But
food. I
guys, an
started,
app is an application, so you have to fill out an
yes,
application, and then you have to wait for it to be approved. And I'm guessing it's not.
which will take a few days. It takes a good few days. I used to put apps in quite a lot. As I said, my mum really supported me. She held my hand through
No,
prison.
she was
Um,
working, babe. She was working for you.
she was working for me. She genuinely was working for me. Like she really was. My auntie said to me when I come out, anyone would think you was dead, right? Because the way your mum used to just like my mum was very emotional when I went to prison. And the thing is, as I said, with my ex who I was in this DV relationship with, he went to prison quite a bit. So I'd experienced the other side as well of being that person that supported the person inside. And one thing I will say is when you're in prison, all you can think about is what you're going through. So you don't think about what your family or friends or partner is going through on the outside. They're doing the sentence with you. My mum was doing the sentence with me.
It's a
She
ripple,
a
it's a
hundred
ripple
percent.
effect, isn't it?
It is a ripple effect. My sisters at the time, one was in college, the other one, Bo was in school last couple of years, I want to say year 10 or something. She got kicked out of school at the time when I was in prison. And I just remember, like, I remember going into prison and Bo used to listen to everything I said. So if I told her do this, do that, she would do it. What as soon as I went into prison, she no longer listened to me and she'd start getting rude to me. I remember a couple times arguing with her on the phone and she'll put the phone down. Hurt me so much because I'm like, oh my goodness,
And
like
you feel
this is
helpless.
my baby. I'm helpless. I can't do nothing. I remember when my mum told me she got kicked out of school and she weren't going back to school. And that was my responsibility because the stress I put on my family from going to prison, that rippled down on them. That was the ripple effect. And that made her start acting wild. Like her protector's gone now. Her stress, all the stresses that she would hand over to me or the person that would make her feel safe is no longer there. So now she's rolling on the streets, not caring, not having a care in the world. My sister's in prison. I don't care about nothing or no one. And for me, that was something that I felt harshly in prison. My other sister was the smoking, depressed, getting through. And my mum, as I said, very emotional, someone that has never really been emotional. As I said, I've been through. I've watched my mum go through DV. It's always seen her 10 toes on the floor, strong and up. My mum's coming to see me crying. My grandmother, someone that amazing relationship with. So although my mum didn't give me that emotional support, my grandmother did. So my grandmother was the person that showed me how to love. My grandmother, old woman, used to come to the prison every single week without fail. I tell you a funny story actually. My grandmother used to come to the prison. An old man around her age used to live around the corner from my grandmother, right? And he used to come to the prison every week as well to see someone in the prison. I actually knew this girl. So when I've gone into prison, there's a couple of people from Walthamstow, Leighton, Waltham Forest that was in prison that I had already knew from the streets. So this guy used to come every week. So my nan used to meet him, go to the bus stop with him, travel to Holloway. They were from Leighton. And one day, like every week, she'd come in with him. One day she'd come in with him and he's waving at me. So like, nah, we're all friends. So sitting down, he's waving at me. I wave back. My nan said something like, "Oh, it's so sweet. He comes to see his granddaughter. Grandkids are so special." So I started laughing, and I was like, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "No, that's not his granddaughter." She said, "Who is that, Cherelle?" I said, "He's a sugar daddy." She said, "Sugar what?" She said, "Sugar what?"
Dirty
I said,
old man.
I said, Nanny, he sees her like he's in a relationship,
He's
romantic.
getting booped.
She said, "Oh no, no, no! I never see my nan come back with him again. She never
Yeah, that
ever." So when she used to come each week, I said, "Where's your friend, Nan?" She said, I leave earlier, so I don't see him anymore."
she
My
didn't
nan was
approve.
traumatized. Like she
She
was so
didn't
traumatized
approve.
with that. She did not approve because I tell you what, my nan was such a classy lady. Never heard her swear. She had my back. I believe because my mum was so young when she had me, my nan just had my back. When I went into prison, that broke her. That really did break her. But she, as I said, she supported me through, come every single week. I remember I used to call her and my grandfather would answer the phone. And then when he'd call my nan, he'd say, "Jill, Holloway's calling." So he wouldn't even call me by my name. He'd say Holloway. And one thing I did miss that my grandfather, as I said, he was racist. He didn't take to me or my sisters throughout our whole lives. He changed my name to Cheryl because it was more white. So he would never call me Cherelle. He always called me Cheryl. So, but the funny part is when I was in Holloway, I was neither Cherelle or Cheryl. I was Holloway, right? And he didn't like me. It was very well known. He didn't
Yeah.
like me. He didn't like my sisters. However, one day I called and he said, "Oh yeah, I want to come and see you." I said, "Okay," but we all knew he wanted to come and see me because he wanted to see what an inside of a women's prison looked like.
Yeah.
But I let him come, and he sat there the whole time asking me, "What's that one there for? What's that one in there for?" There was this one nosy,
True
right?
crime. True crime,
But
Granddad.
yeah, yeah, true crime. That's what it was. But I let him sit there, and I told him all of it. So yeah, I was very lucky in the sense that I had a very supportive family. I think prison is this is something and I talk about prison quite highly, to be honest, because for me, my life was so fast. I haven't got into all the ins and outs of my violence and how much of a bully I was. So when I was a teenager, as I said, I had seen domestic violence. I'd been through abuse. I'd been through abuse with my father. I'd been through, and I'm talking directly to me. I've been through a domestic violent relationship. I was so angry because I was a victim, right? But I was never seen as a victim, even down to my mum
Yeah.
was when she would see, because my mum was one of them mums that would just walk in the bathroom if you're in the bath, regardless, right? So my mum would see the bruises on me. She would ask me about the bruises. I would lie. Oh, I fell over, I bumped into this. She would let that go. Now, someone that's been through it, she knows that's not the case, right? So, and then when she did actually have proof that my ex was the person that was giving me these bruises, she was very rah, 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 right? My mum's a true East End
Yeah.
girl, right? So she was very hyper and not someone I could go and talk to and explain, right? So, for me, when I was in prison, I slowed. That was it. I had to stop. I had to stop. I had to put that mirror to myself and I had to look at myself now. And I think prison was the first time. Yeah, so prison was the first time I actually had to slow down, put a mirror to myself and stop. I was living such a fast life. So for me, prison was a positive experience
Hmm.
in the sense that I got to know myself. It was the first time I'd actually read the Bible. It was the first time I had been able to reflect. I believe that's probably one of the first times I'd done self reflection in my entire life.
Hmm.
And I could just sit there and think clearly. And as I said, I had Lucy in there who was she was able to connect with people, very good. So I was able to have conversations, deep conversations with Lucy about my feelings and how I felt and relationships that I'd had and get a very good understanding of myself.
Hmm.
However, the trauma in prison,
I was
people
just about to say
self-harming,
it can't be good.
right? The people self-harming. Self-harm was such a massive thing in prison. Every other cell, right? I was a wing cleaner in prison, and the self harm in the prison was massive. Every other cell. Also, fits, people having fits. Now, I don't know if this everyone had epilepsy or if people were withdrawing from drugs or whatever it was, but like when I first went into prison, people would have fits, and they used to call it body popping. So someone would drop on the floor and they'd say in there, "Oh,
Mm.
that person's body popping," right? So I remember, and my mom remembers this as well. Like I'd be on the phone, so the phones are in the communal areas. So I'd be on the phone, and at first, when someone would drop on the floor and start fitting, I would start to get panicky, right? So this is when I first went in. After a month and a half, you'd hear all the commotion, and my mum would be like, "What's that?" And I'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, someone's just on the floor fitting," as it because it was the norm, right? It was just normality. So that was something I definitely saw in
Mental
prison.
health, I can imagine as well in prison. A lot of women who, like yourself, have been through domestic abuse because women in the criminal justice system and in prison in particular, the directive has nearly always been to not necessarily put women in prison unless it's extremely serious crimes. But in my experience of prisons, they tend to put women in prison for a lot of minor offences.
That's what I was just gonna say. It's wild because I didn't really see balance in prison. I saw you got lifers, you got GBH with intent. I saw that quite a bit. But then on the flip side, so many class A drug users, um, theft. I mean, the person I was talking about with the old man, the sugar daddy girl, right? She come to prison 4 times while I was in the prison. Yeah, and I only ended up doing 6 months, right? But she come 4 times. I remember she got released 2 weeks later. I was back. She just kept coming back. I would say 94% of the prison was drug users, and then you had the rest of the prison that wasn't, i.e., me and Lucy, couple of others, and that was about it. Yeah, unfortunately, there was a lot of drug users in the prison, and their crimes would be very petty crimes. I'm guessing now, career wise as well, what I do, their criminal record was a long criminal record, hence the reason for the sentencing in prison. However, I think rehabilitation was just not there. Yeah, it weren't there at all. And that's what the prison system in the UK is supposed to be about, rehabilitation. Yeah, there wasn't none of that there. But I also believe, especially women's prisons, right? I believe they should be more therapeutic. Yeah. And I say this because I remember one particular day sitting down, about five people, they was all drug users. And every single one of them told me their story. And their stories were sexual violent abuse, one losing a baby. Every single story was something I had been through. That is when I saw my strength.
Yeah.
That's when I understood my strength. I was able to reflect and think, you know what, I'm not a drug user.
By the
I'm not
grace of
on
God,
class
go
A
I.
drugs. Yeah. How is that? Because I've been through everything that all of these people are telling me. So I really saw my strength in prison.
Mhm.
And coming out of prison, I was able to use that. I think for me, a big shock was going over to the adult side of the prison.
Yeah.
That's when I actually saw the cockroaches and the mice and the real self harm and the real. I remember I was on a wing with an old Jewish lady. She was old. When I mean old, she was like 75 in a wheelchair. And she had actually told the judge to go F himself. Looking back now, I believe she had dementia or something like that. Then I didn't know what dementia was really, right? But looking back now, I believe she had something like that. Now, she used to just sit in her wheelchair and she would release her urine. She would feces on herself. She would throw that around the whole room. She would abuse everyone and anyone. But she took to me. She liked me. To be fair, the whole prison, a lot of people in the prison like me. All the different minorities like
You're a
me
very
in the
likable
prison.
person, Cherelle.
Thank you. But yeah, she took to me. So she used to talk to me quite a bit. And I remember her saying, I think she was in there, don't quote me, but something like TV license or not paying tax or something like that, right? It was something very minor. And she wasn't supposed to get a prison sentence, but she ended up, whatever, she got a fine and she ended up telling the judge F you and he sent her to
Yeah.
prison, right? But the way, the impact, I don't know whatever happened to that lady, right? But the impact going to prison, yeah, could have done on that woman's life, right? I don't know. I never see her go to a visit. So I don't know if she had a supportive network around her. I doubt she did, because as I said, I never saw her go to a visit, right? But she was very old and just didn't need to be there. And what made it worse is there was no therapeutic setting there. So you're not rehabilitating. I mean, this old woman didn't need to be rehabilitated. She lived her life, right? But
I think it's about anger management. That's about it.
yeah,
That's about
yeah.
the extent of what you get off
I
it.
mean, she was definitely angry. However, if she did have dementia, that is something that you cannot stop. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like that's comes with a process. It was definitely not the right setting for her. I mean, I would say half of the prison it weren't the right settings for them people.
Didn't Holloway have a whole wing called D0 for mentally ill
For
patients?
mentally ill patients, and you know what the worst thing is, right? Majority of the people on my wing had mental health issues, right? And no, they had no space. No one. I remember there was one girl. I don't remember her name, but she was mentally ill, and the whole wing would protest for this girl. She needs to be on that
Yeah,
wing in Holloway, the mental health wing. There's no space for her. But she would cut, she would fit, she would, and I don't think this girl was a drug user or any. I think she come into prison with mental health issues. So she done this on the outside, but they could not get her on the wing because the wing was
yeah,
completely packed. It's the same with they had the drugs wing when you first go in. Instead of going to the Holloway hotel bit, they was
yeah,
going to the detox. It
yeah.
was detox. And again, people were coming off detox without being detoxed and just sent into the prison.
So
Quite a
it's a
few,
lot of trauma that you see, but
so much trauma in prison. I tell you, I come out of prison and I had a trauma. I had a fear of keys, hearing keys jingle. That was my thing for about a year. Couldn't hear keys jingle because that took me back. We talk about people being institutionalized a lot. What we don't talk about is what that actually means
mhm,
and how that affects you. So when I'm talking about a world within a world, we've got to start dissecting that world, what is within the world, right? So if we look at anything you want, you gotta put an app in. You're surrounded by drug users. You're out of your comfort zone, and of course, you've committed crime. You're not supposed to go to somewhere where it is
Separated from your
a
family,
hotel.
and in a lot of cases, kids.
Right. And not only that, right? You're given a number. Your identity is taken away. So you now become this number, right? But if you, as I said, if the prison system in the UK is supposed to be a rehabilitation system, and then you're going into this system. Now, to be fair, I'm talking about going to prison in 2006. So it's very different to now, right? But at that time, you went in, you didn't get no therapy, you didn't get no support workers in there. Like you was your support and who you could make as friends in there to be your support. Like,
You
and it's
do build a
very
sense of community in prison.
you do 100% you do. Like as I said, I went in never mixed with people that are lesbians or drug users. Like my friend Lucy, I remember just Lucy was just my girl. That was it, right? Like, and I don't mean in a romantic sense. I mean she was
Mm.
just my friend. She was people's, and obviously she used to get quite a lot of visits as well from her family. She had quite a good supportive network, so my mum and my sisters and my family started to get to know Lucy as well from visits. When we'd go on visits, I'd get to know her family from
Mm.
the visits and stuff. I remember one day I was saying to my mum, like, Mum, everyone's gay, everyone's got a girlfriend. And I was like, everyone's saying I'm gonna have a girl. Like, and just so you know, guys, I never had a girl in prison, right? I am not that way inclined. Prison did not turn me, yeah, because it couldn't. Yeah, I'm
You
true
weren't gay
to
for the
myself.
stay.
I was not gay for the stay, right? I stayed true. I was Cherelle, and I will always be Cherelle. And that's what I'm saying about leader, because there's so many people that went into prison that just wasn't that and just
Yeah.
come along and become that. Do you know what I mean? Like I am very true. I'm me. Yeah. But I remember sitting there with my mum and I'm saying about all these lesbians, and my mum said, "But Cheryl, your friend Lucy, she's lesbian." And I said, no, you've never told me that. And then like, as
No,
we're going
innit?
through
Did
the
you?
visit, I said, as we're going through the visit, I said, well, she has said partner quite a lot and not boyfriend or girlfriend. So maybe she is. I don't know. So anyway, when we've linked up or whatever, I said to her and she said, yeah, normal. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I think for me, it was good to get to know Lucy without that information because it didn't put my
Yeah.
barriers up or anything. So
Yeah.
we had already solidified our relationship as a friendship. Do you know what I mean? So nothing was changing that. So I think she had a massive impact on the way I started to view and my opinion
Yeah.
the other girls in the prison and the lesbians and stuff because it just changed my opinion. And that's something that stayed with me throughout my lifetime once I left prison. And that no longer was something that bothered me. And to be honest, it never bothered me beforehand. I never had really thought about it that deep. But as a young person, especially a brown young person growing up in East London, you're taught to, that one's gay or this one's that. You're just automatically taught
Yeah.
to have that approach.
Yeah.
But I never really looked at it so deeply. So when I was in prison, the reflections that I had to have were things that were like, whoa, like you've never really thought about these things. I didn't know my brain could go to these things,
Yeah.
which again is quite powerful. Same with the drug users. My father ended up being a crackhead, schizophrenic, and heroin addict. So for me, the drug users were a trigger to me because my father's out there doing drugs, and now I'm locked up with all these drug users. So for me, that was a massive
So
trigger. You
here
know what
we're
I'm
talking
saying?
about.
So
I spoke about earlier in the podcast about re-traumatizing. So prison is a place that actually should be a place of rehabilitation, but I would suggest that it re-traumatizes a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
and it triggers the triggers you have there. Like as I said, I was quite fortunate. One thing I did notice about prison as well is prison was the first time. So we grew up in London, right, Lee? So we grew up quite a diverse space. Of course, we've seen racism and
You can
stuff.
call me Lee or you can call me Lucy.